You're listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport Media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
Without further ado, and I am holding a copy of the book I just received. Yes, before I went down to Washington, I put in my order, and it was here waiting for me when I returned. And the book is entitled Native Americans, Patriotism, Exceptionalism, and the New American Identity by James Robbins. Jim, welcome back to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And by the way, I did just receive it, so I haven't had a chance to read all that much of it, but I started with the introduction, which I believe you're supposed to do, right on page 1, I believe it was. And so far, so good. I'm very excited to get into it, but I'll give you a few moments to discuss the book and some of the things that you feel would best represent it. And, of course, I want everybody out there to go pick up a copy, and I got mine on Amazon. I'm sure there are other places you can go as well.
Well, the book is really meant to be at least start a discussion about the forces that are kind of tearing the country apart. On the one hand, we have the multiculturalists who want to divide us up into grievance groups and camps based on ethnicity and past offenses and things like this, and divide the country. And then on the other hand, we have globalists and folks like that who say that nationalism and identity don't really matter anymore. That we just need to all be global citizens and stuff like that. So what my book attempts to do is go back to an earlier understanding of what it means to be an American. How really do we define what an American is? What is Americanism? What's the American dream? These kinds of things. Asking these questions and trying to come up with a definition that everybody can really rally around and say, okay, despite our differences and despite the pulls of identity politics and the seduction of globalism and stuff like that, like, what does it really mean to be an American anymore? Because if it doesn't mean anything, then I think we're in kind of a problem.
I think it's a first of all, very compelling thing that you're addressing here in your book, but you bring up really an issue of identity crisis, if you will. Because in my mind, Jim, I thought the same thing for many years. Even as a kid, I just remember filling out various exams, college entrance things, applications, that's the first time where you really start checking off, oh, I'm a this or that, or things of that nature. And you start thinking, and then you're like, a Native American. Well, what exactly is that? I thought that was me. Oh no, that's the Indians who were here before us. And you're like, but wait, what? Why am I what's the difference between a Black American and a white American and a Hispanic American? Jim, aren't we all supposed to be living under the same rules and have the same types of opportunities? Isn't this all kind of guaranteed to us in the Constitution?
Well, absolutely, and part of the reason for the title was that, I'm a Native American in the sense that I was born here, I grew up here. My family on my dad's side has been here since before the Revolution. On my mom's side, they came over in the 20th century. But I'm not saying that you have to be here a long time either to be a Native American. You could be an immigrant, really, and have the same American values and the thirst for freedom and the desire to play by the rules, these kind of things, as someone who's been here for a long time. And by the same token, you can be somebody whose family has been over here for a long time and completely reject the American way, completely reject American ideals, want to subvert the Constitution, impose socialism on our country, completely throw out the ideals of the founders and the freedoms that we all revere, or at least we should revere. So, it's kind of a complicated argument, but basically what it gets down to is if you buy into a definition of America, the traditional definition of a land of opportunity, a land of freedom, and so forth, then you can lay claim to that identity as an American. And if you don't back those things up, if you don't believe in those things, well, I don't know what you are, but you're not American.
Right. Jim, I want to add one more thought to this, and it's something that I've always appreciated when you go to another country, or you're traveling, or you're looking at another culture, a different society. I appreciate that there's so many different nations around the world. I appreciate that there's large ones and small ones, and different variations of complexities, of course. But to me, you go somewhere to experience what a people and a culture are like, because it broadens your view of the world. It gives you interesting things to, whether it be different types of music or different types of foods, or the way people dress, or the way, some societies are more open and closed. To me, that's the beauty of the world. And I don't want one United Nations world government where everybody's supposed to follow the same exact creed and law, and we're supposed to speak the same language and eat the same stuff and look the same. I mean, nobody, I think, wants that. But coming back to your book, I think you're kind of helping us to say, let's define who we are and why why it's important, among so many other things, of course. And if I'm putting any words in your mouth, please tell me.
No, I think that's absolutely right. There are different nations and cultures around the world, and the United States is one of them. We're a unique society, a unique nation. I mean, a unique people. That's really what I want to get to. That the reason why this book was written, the thing that started it out was when the Census Bureau started asking around 1980 what people's origins were, the national origins. Large numbers of people wrote in American. They wouldn't say, Irish or German or French or what have you. They say American, millions of people. And at first the Census Bureau said those weren't responsive answers, that you didn't answer the question. They wouldn't let people answer, I am not anything else. I am just an American. But eventually they started counting that as a real answer. And in some parts of the country, it's actually the plurality or even the majority answer, where people say, don't try to identify me as anything else but an American. And I think it's really important, if we're going to keep this country going and overcome the really harsh divisions in this country, which I think some people benefit from politically, by the way. And if we're going to overcome that, we have to have a common denominator of what it means to be part of this American nation. And if we can't come up with that, then, I don't know, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you bring up a fabulous point, Jim. If you think about the way this works, you have one side that would say we have to do all these things because they're critical metrics. If we don't measure by black and white, man and woman, faith, nationality, et cetera, then how do we know whether we're being fair or we're being equal? But remember, we're a nation of laws. We're a nation of immigrants, and we're a melting pot. But we are not, by any means, a nation that's, at least by design anyway, we're becoming that rapidly, but we're not supposed to be an equality of outcome-based nation. We call that communism. We call that socialism, right? We are a nation based upon equality of opportunity. And until we stop identifying ourselves from a government perspective as anything other than Americans so we need to celebrate our individuality, our uniqueness, our mixed cultures, and that's part of what makes us beautiful, but we need to think of ourselves first and foremost as Americans. And I agree with you fully. It bothers me. We're all shades of gray. I mean, the fact that we always have to identify, it drives me crazy when people identify themselves as African Americans. You're Americans. You're my brother. We believe the same. We do the same. We have the same, opportunities, at least generically. We may have, family opportunities, wealth and things that may be given to us at birth that give us a leg up. But as a general rule, we all have equal opportunities for success and for failure. And I think that's part of what makes our country phenomenal.
Oh, definitely. I get into the arguments of American exceptionalism and the roots of those things, talk about the American dream, the economic dream of America. And I like to, in talking about all these different concepts, I like to go back to their roots. Like, when did people start talking about American exceptionalism? When did people start talking about the American dream? Like, when did that expression first start to get used? Stuff like that, to try to get some insight into where did these concepts come from, why did people believe them, And then how did they come under attack, and how did they get critiqued? Why are they under siege now? This kind of thing. So really, the book is partly history. It's partly kind of social history. Partly, I guess you'd say, partly it's philosophy, but a lot, and it's mostly about just trying to figure out what is the definition of this thing that we call America, and Americans as people. What are our values, or what should they be, and how can we all find a common core to come around and keep this country going? Because, as I've said, I mean, I think it bears repeating, the divisions currently in this country are getting so severe. I mean, politically, the country is more divided than it was in the years after the Civil War. I mean, think about that. When you had a partisan rift after the most disastrous war in our history, and now we have a worse partisan rift right now. What does that say about our country?
Well, I think it says a lot about our country. I'm glad you brought up the external view of the country versus the internal view, because one of the things, and I don't want to give too much away from the book because we obviously want people to read it, or your writings are always terrific, but what is your sense if you compare the American view of ourselves versus the world view of ourselves, and which leads the other? And I'll give you an example. Right, one way of looking at America is the American dream, the quintessential John Wayne, Clint Eastwood mentality, where we were tough, this manifest destiny that whether we weren't always perfect, but you knew that our tenacity, our heart was in the right place, our innovation, our drive was unmatched globally, and anything this world has ever seen. And on the flip side, there's always been this sense of Americans are a little brash, a little full of themselves, a little too much of a chip on our shoulder. So do you get a sense, Jim, that what the world sees is more reflection of how we represent ourselves in popular culture, or do you think it's really more driven by how the world has always seen us?
What's interesting about that is if you look at polling on attitudes about America, that people around the world, particularly in the areas where they don't like us, because in areas where they do like us, fine, they like us. But in areas like the Middle East or Africa, where they have a problem with American policy, they generally approve of American ideals and the American way of life. If you ask them about things like that, do you like American television? Do you like American movies or music, or just the idea of America, American freedoms? People will say yes, they approve of that. What they object to are American policies, the actions of the American government, or American intervention, or, America fighting in a specific war, something like that. So on that level, the policy level, or like the approval of the president level, they might not like us, but people always respond to the American ideal. And I think the reason is because the American ideal is really the most human ideal of freedom. America was an expression of that human ideal, built by people who came to this country, and, it was a wilderness, and I understand that there were also native peoples who lived here, but for the Europeans who came here, it was their escape from the bondage of feudalism, or, the vestiges of feudalism, or they were freeing religious persecution, or just looking for some kind of opportunity. But coming here to a continent that had nothing, no support structure, no welfare payments, no, universal health care, none of this garbage, just coming here to a wilderness and carving a civilization out of it based on freedom. And that is the root of Americanism. I think that has to be continually refreshed as, the American ideal. And it's the thing that people around the world recognize as the core of Americanism, that thirst for an expression of freedom.
Well said. Brett wants to transition over to the NSA and has some questions on that, but I wanted to just bring up the fact that as I've traveled all over the world, one of the very common things that I've heard from people, including during election cycles when I've been overseas, people often will express frustration with America because we so often don't live up to our own ideals. And that's a very interesting perspective. We put a metric and a measurement stick out that they love, and then they say, why aren't you living up to that? And I think this NSA issue speaks volumes to that. Brett?
Yeah, Jim, I wanted to, in a few minutes we have left, just ask you your feelings, and hopefully you had a chance to watch some of what was going on in the hearings today. We saw the national security agencies, the Chief General Keith Alexander, along with some people from the Justice Department and other lower down people in NSA, were providing some more detailed, a little more transparency, if you will, on what some of these programs are, what they're doing, and of course, without revealing anything that would be detrimental to national security. Now, Jim, before I let you respond, one interesting thing that was asked by one of the members of Congress was, is this hearing having an impact on national security? And General Alexander's response was, no, I think you guys are going about this in a good manner. I think the damage is already done by the leak by Snowden. And I'll let you respond now, Jim.
Well, what's there to respond to? That's his assessment. His assessment is it's not damaging our national security. That the leak is what damaged it. But now the follow-up is not. He's saying it's already as damaged as it's going to get. Was that his response?
Yeah, I thought this whole thing was interesting, and quite frankly, when you look at the NSA and what they're doing, there was language. They were saying this program isn't. They exactly the words. Several times while they were answering questions, James Cole, who's the Deputy Attorney General, he said, we don't listen in on people's calls on this plan. We don't look at your emails on this plan. And they kept saying this plan. And every time I heard that, I'm thinking, so what plan are you doing that under? Because as much as they, I thought they did a good job in answering questions, and I thought they handled themselves well. However, I'm still very leery and worried about my government. They didn't fix that with me, at least.
I think that's really the root of this. It's not, the program itself, whatever they're doing, PRISM or whatever, whether it's effective, okay, they say they've broken up attacks, but we know they haven't broken up all attacks. And how effective could it have been if we had the Boston bombing when 2 foreign intelligence agencies were warning us against these guys? We've heard that they don't set up on mosques, things like this. Well, maybe they do or don't. I don't know. That's just what we've heard. So maybe it's effective and maybe it isn't. But the real problem, and I think the thing that most people are upset about, is the fact that we can't trust the government. Polling shows that most people see the government as a bigger threat to their freedom than terrorists. The Obama administration's answer to all of this is, well, trust us, or safeguards are in place. Or as you pointed out earlier, the ridiculous statement from the president that this is transparent because they have secret courts and secret locations making secret decisions, even secret decisions about the constitutionality or unconstitutionality of these programs that we're not allowed to see. So it's not transparent, and we don't trust the government, and they're going to have a better answer than that.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Jim, because they could say we have all these checks, internal checks and balances in place, and we have the FISA courts and all these other things that check out against this. But at the end of the day, we have had many, not just members of the federal government, but all levels of government, many people who've been convicted of all types of crimes of corruption or even treason or so on and so forth. And we have an IRS right now that has gone after individual groups. We've had this president do things against individual people and groups. We've had, people all throughout different agencies over time do bad things, and we're supposed to believe that just because they're the NSA, and frankly, I have a lot of respect for this particular general. I think he's done a pretty worthy job, but how do we really know that none of these guys have overlooked things that we're just not aware of that are contrary to our Constitution and our rights, just in the name of national security?
Oh, absolutely. The issue of them infringing on our freedoms, surveilling us without probable cause, things like that, which, no matter what the security benefits are, those are wrong. I wrote an editorial the other day where I said, what if the police stopped every single car going down the road every day? Well, yeah, they'd find stuff. They'd probably find fugitives. They'd find contraband, drugs, whatnot, someone, with illegal guns, expired driver's licenses, or, the tag on their car was expired. Sure, they'd find a lot of stuff. But, do we want the police to be able to do that? Just stop everybody all the time? What if you had to walk down the street and give your fingerprint periodically, every couple of blocks? You had to stick your finger into a thing that read your fingerprint to make sure that you were where you're supposed to be. Is that the kind of thing that we want? We'd probably be safer in some respect, like, they'd find a wanted guy. Maybe they'd, in a rare case, they'd uncover a terrorist. But that's not America. That's not freedom. So the utilitarian argument that, we can do all this because it makes us safer. Well, yeah, there are a lot of things we can do that make us safer that run roughshod over our rights. Freedom entails risk. And the question is, how much risk do we want to balance against how much additional security are we going to get? And if you need a program that surveils every single email that everybody sends in this country just to get a marginal increase in our safety, I don't think it's worth it.
I don't either, but I want to give you a specific program that's not federal. In New York City, they have stop and frisk. They've had this program for years, and it started with Giuliani and then Bloomberg. And New York City was in horrible shape, and Giuliani did an incredible job bringing that city back to a safe, really respectable place to be able to walk around in, because it was bad. And we look at Chicago, you look at Detroit today and some other cities. New York City has done a fantastic job. But I want to remind us that they've done this program. This is a city decision. This isn't a federal law. It's not something along that nature. It's as a city they decided to do this. And, of course, it could be challenged. But I thought it was interesting that Eric Holder's department came in and said, we're going to consider whether we should have a federal monitor to make sure that you're not violating people's civil rights, amongst other things. And to me, how on one hand could this president and Eric Holder be supporting what the NSA is doing, but then make that kind of statement about New York City?
Right. Also, I don't think that they just stop and frisk people randomly. They probably stop and frisk people selectively.
Right.
So, it's one thing to say that you have probable cause or some Fourth Amendment case. If you are intercepting the email of somebody who, for example, is sending emails back and forth to an al-Qaeda leader, like we had with Nidal Hassan, who, by the way, was another guy they missed, or the Tsarnaev brothers who are in communication with terrorists abroad, whom we also missed, that's one thing. But if you're just saying we're going to have a dragnet, we're going to throw out and catch every single email, every phone call, whether it's metadata or not, and just in the hopes that through this fishing expedition we'll find something, well, fine. You could do that every single day. In a city at the federal level, you could just be surveilling people, hauling people in for questioning on a random basis. You could do that all day. And that wouldn't be freedom. That's not our country. That's not consistent with the Fourth Amendment.
Jim, do you have 2 or 3 more minutes?
Yeah, it's your show.
Okay. Well, it's our show, but it's your time, too. Hey, so I tell you, one of the things that is really compelling about tying all this together is the IRS, the NSA, et cetera, the complete violation of our rights. Realize now there was just a 253-page Obamacare rule that came out Friday, of which allows for and specifies significant, what I would call additional violations of our privacy under Obamacare, that allows Obamacare to share all your personal health records with various state and federal agencies. So we've just seen how little trust we can have in our federal agencies. Think about the type of information that is contained in your health records. Think about how much some of that personal privacy is. Think about the ramifications of people's ability to seek health care. And again, this comes back to the right to privacy. If we had a brain implant that could read all of our thoughts, well, we could be an extremely safe society. Just hook us up to the matrix, right? And if we have a bad thought, you could get rid of us. But we don't live like that. We want to live as a free society. And I caution people that when you start looking at how all these programs come together, Jim, I would argue Americans have already given away the last vestiges of our liberty and freedom, and if we give away our right to the Second Amendment, we may have nothing left whatsoever.
Well, I don't think people have given it away. I think they've been fooled into this. number one, all of the NSA surveillance and all that has been secret. It's all behind the scenes. Nobody knew about it. And by the way, people say it started under the Bush years. Yeah, it started then, but it has substantially expanded and gone well beyond what was ever intended under the Obama regime. And James Sensenbrenner, one of the authors of the Patriot Act, under which this is justified, has said so. He said they never intended for this to happen and that government's out of control. With respect to Obamacare, it's the same thing. We had to pass it before we knew it was in it, according to Nancy Pelosi. Well, now we know what's in it. Things like this, where you're going to have to give away all of your personal health information to God knows what agencies, who knows where it'll go, who knows who's going to have access to it, and who knows who can abuse it. Because when the president says things like there are safeguards, well, I suppose there are probably safeguards on what the IRS is supposed to do too, but that didn't seem to matter. They were using it as a political tool. I'm sure there are safeguards on what the Justice Department is supposed to do with respect to journalists. But apparently that didn't matter either, because as we've seen, they'll go after journalists and call them co-conspirators for reporting on leaks that government people made. And, it goes on and on. So we can't really trust the government with this information is the bottom line. The fact that they can get it, well, that's kind of a given because they're the government and they have claimed these extraordinary powers. But we don't have to be happy about it, and we can take these rights back.
Well, we can, so long as we maintain the ability to do so. Jim, one of the things I would raise the caution flag on is look how easy it was for a relatively intelligent but not particularly high tier or high value guy named Snowden to get access to very highly classified and extremely damaging documents and processes. And we discovered that there are literally hundreds of thousands of contractors working at high cost for the government to do these systems. This will have the exact same thing under Obamacare. Just imagine all of the personal information, and I don't care if it's against the people we don't even like, right? Just think of all that personal information about Americans that is going to leak out, and think of the embarrassment and the impact on people's career, and by the way, all the behind-the-scenes blackmail that will be rife when you actually know the details of people's health records. It's actually pretty darn scary.
Oh, it's very scary when you have a centralized database of all this stuff. I mean, look at Bradley Manning, who had access to, I think the database was called Harmony. I'm not exactly sure which one he had. But in any case, it was supposed to be a centralized database to coordinate intelligence information. And so he just took it and basically, handed it over to WikiLeaks, and off we go. So suppose some other, crusader for openness, quote unquote, decides that everybody's health record is important. So they download that onto a thumb drive, and off you go. So yeah, we may very well see a future in which some people who are campaigning for complete transparency in life decide to release everybody's health records because the government couldn't control it. So if people are comfortable with that, fine, because that's going to come.
Well, Jim, I wanted to thank you for, taking so much time with us today, and I want to give you a quick plug on a couple things if we can. First of all, you could join Jim tomorrow at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on his show, The Conservative Connection, every Wednesday. And, of course, again, congratulations on your book, Native Americans, which you can go to Amazon or other bookstores, order a copy. It's fantastic, along with all of his other books. But I learned something new about you. I know that you've taught at quite a few universities, and I'll mention a few of them, the Fletcher School, Boston University, the Marine Corps University, and the National Defense University. But I did not know this, and that you were awarded the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff's Joint Meritorious Civilian Service Award. And I just have to say, we're friends, but I'm definitely proud of your accomplishments and the outstanding work that you do in prior years, currently, and going into the future. And as you are the deputy editor at RARE, and also writing on USA Today's board. So I just think it's great, the stuff you're doing, and I just wanted to thank you personally, Jim, for what you've done and your book.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I got that award just for doing my job, so, but thank you. Thanks for the recognition.
No problem. Anyway, Jim, great stuff as always. Don't forget, people, tune in tomorrow at 11 Eastern Time, Conservative Connection. Jim, we'll see you next week.
Okay, see you then.
All right, take care.
Bye.